Welcome to Frankly Festivals, the podcast that explores the world of film events and filmmakers in an attempt to demystify each other's pressures and interests and to foster greater cooperation, understanding, and a stronger industry. I'm John Gann.
And I'm Bart Weiss.
So Bart, tonight we have three incredible guests. All are key marketers who have mastered the art of marketing for film festivals and film events. And many of them we've worked with in the past. So first, we have John Waldman with WaldWorks PR. John is a multifaceted presence in the entertainment world, known for his work as a film and film festival publicist, a consultant, filmmaker, journalist, and critic. Currently, he's a publicist and consultant for independent films in more than 20 national regional film festivals, including Dances with Films, Naples International, Hot Springs Documentary, Waco International, Harlem International, Asian Film of Dallas, Festival of Cinema in New York City, and Boise Film Festival, which I guess is going to be starting its second year, and many others. I usually run into him at festivals I had no idea he was going to be at, so it's always fun to see him. John is also the founder and editor-in-chief of FilmsGoneWild.com and has been a host on the Daily Buzz NPR broadcast reporting from Sundance, Toronto, and Cannes for the past 8 years. Welcome, John.
And John is also co-host of the Fog of Truth podcast.
There's no end of things that I'm a co-host of now. Good to be here. Good to be here again with this trio that you guys have gathered here. This is pretty
And
awesome.
of course, my marketing person told me I was supposed to say that.
Oh, well, there you go.
All right, our second guest is Lisa Trifone with Bright Iris Film, with nearly 2 decades of experience in the independent film industry and a lifelong love of movies. And I think we all have a lifelong love of movies. To date, that work includes film festival management, program, and marketing at the Heartland Film Festival, Indie Film Fest, publicity management and logistics for the Sundance Film Festival, art house distribution strategy, marketing, and national publicity for Film Movement and Music Box Films. In addition to her agency, Lisa is a member of the Chicago Films Critics Association.
So thank you for being here, Lisa.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited for this conversation.
I met Lisa last year at the Index, the festival and art house convergence meeting in Chicago, and through Dan at IndieFest.
Yeah, Dan and I go way back. And will you be back this summer? I know it's not Index, but Convergence is happening
We
in
haven't
Chicago
figured
this
that out
summer.
yet, but
Yeah.
I hope to. It was a great conference last year.
Yeah.
And third, we have Kendra Rubenfeld from KRPR. Kendra got her first taste of PR and marketing after starting the Our City Film Festival in Washington, D.C. in 2008, and that's how we first met. It spurred her to found her own PR and marketing firm in 2013, and since then, Kendra has worked with countless arts and culture nonprofits, including D.C. Environmental Film Festival, the Library of Congress, Schmancy Schmancy, Film Fest DC, and projects with artists and activists, the likes of Jesse Eisenberg, Gloria Steinem, and many more. Kendra, it's great to have you.
So good to be here. Thanks for having me.
So we're going to start off with the most basic of question, but what is PR and why is it so important as opposed to just putting out a social media post or an ad in a local newspaper?
I've been doing a lot, as I'm sure my colleagues here have, of just trying to educate filmmakers and empower them if they're working with publicists or trying to do some of this on their own. And I have often boiled it down to marketing is what you say directly to your audience, and publicity is what other people are saying about you. That seems to click for filmmakers and organizations. I'm trying to understand media coverage versus social media ads or posts or event calendars or things like that. I have found that to be a helpful distinction when it's someone else talking about what you're doing.
My quick-witted response always is anything that you've heard or read or seen in the press about my clients is my fault. And in the general sense, people get it that way. But I think for the purposes of talking about what the hell we're actually doing, I think now what we do really, not just the simple things, as you're saying, like putting out a press release or a media alert or blasting out to thousands of people and hoping that somebody picks something up, but it's actually coaxing the messaging into that. So it's not just facts. It's not just when is a screening or who's going to be there or what the synopsis is, but it's also steering people along to putting some ideas in their head that we would like them to think about when they're dealing with our clients or considering our clients. In fact, I think both Lisa and Kendra are very good at that, and it's something that I try to do too.
Yeah. I generally speaking, PR is a very wide reaching word. It encompasses a lot of things and can even get into sort of crisis communications and things like that. I think for our purposes, it's publicity. And I think Lisa said it really well in terms of publicity is basically what everybody else is saying about you, as opposed to what you're saying about yourself. And what you're saying about yourself is usually marketing. So if you want other people to talk about you and you want somebody to be managing what people are saying, that's when you need a publicist or some sort of person to be managing your PR.
And I think I would add, as we think about events as well, we all have experience on the ground, either repping titles at their festival premieres and being on that side of it from press lines and all these pieces, which I think we'll get into a little bit further, and also repping and supporting, as we heard in our introductions, festivals and facilitating press accreditation and setting those press line schedules and interacting with the media in ways that make event coverage possible as well.
So, how is PR different from general marketing?
Well, a lot of it is now getting more and more blurred. It used to be a simple church and state. If you were buying ads or buying billboards or buying stuff like that, then that was marketing. And the stuff that you were earning through convincing some editor or some writer to write about your clients or some photographer to shoot your clients, then that was press. But and I don't know if we want to talk about this, but listen, the truth is now we have to buy some of that press now. And there's a lot of pay for play overtly out there with the people that cover films and film festivals and infotainment pieces. I now actually have to write pieces for journalists and for their sites so they don't just post a press release, but it actually looks like an article and yet it has all the information, but they didn't write it. I did it.
That's depressing.
Yeah, that and the lines are definitely blurred. We at my agency, we've made a concerted effort to expand our reach. We're talking to journalists, but we're also talking to Substackers and podcasters and influencers. And perfect example, I took an opportunity for a paid Instagram post to my client. It's ultimately their decision. That would essentially, like, it would say paid partnership under it on Instagram, but we're out there doing the research and finding these platforms because the media landscape has changed quite so much. I also think, to go back to the difference, I think one of the biggest differences to remember from an organizational standpoint or in the rollout of your film, marketing is something that, for all intents and purposes, you can control. You can control the timeline, you can control the messaging, you can control the content that you're putting out there. It's up to you when you post on your Instagram, when you share your email newsletter, whereas the earned part of earned media and the editorial part of it is, to John's point, you don't have any control. They might just take that press release and reprint it, or they might not run it on a day that works to drive ticket sales for you or something like that. So there's a lot more that goes into the strategy on the PR side of having enough runway and making their job easy so that they can post what you need them to post when you need them to post it. I think that's a really big difference.
I also think that PR is a lot about relationship building. And it's one of the reasons that I think it's important to bring on a publicist or a PR team. A lot of the marketing you can do in house. You know what you're saying, you know your audience really well, and you can just outbound those messages. That can be really handled well in house. PR is a different beast because, to Lisa's point, you're dealing with people that are not within the organization. And it's journalists, it's social media influencers, it's Substackers, it's podcasters. It's all of these people that are going to be talking about the festival or the event or the organization or the film or whatever it is that you're trying to get PR for. And first of all, you want to have access to them, right? And that's what publicists' job is, to build long lists of contacts and keep in good contact with those people on a running basis so that when we send out a pitch and try to get journalists to write, for example, about a film festival or a film, that they're going to open the email. They're going to be, I don't know, intrigued because the last pitch you sent them was about perhaps something else. This tends to be advantageous because a lot of the times if you have a PR person in house, that's fine, but everything that they're sending out to their list is always going to be about your institution, or whatever you're saying. If a publicist was working with you, you may not be their only client, but that's advantageous as well because people will be more interested in saying, "Oh, what's Lisa got to tell me today, or what's Kendra got to tell me, or what John got to tell me today." And they also know that they'll be working with a professional and a third party, and that can be really beneficial as well to have a publicist on board because we're trained while you're doing all the filmmaking and you're becoming an expert in that, or the film festival and becoming an expert in all of the details of that. We've been spending our careers becoming professionals and experts at PR and managing relationships with media and clients and understanding how certain quotes are going to come across and trying to get their attention, etc. It's a different beast. And so because of that, it deserves its own team.
I think you said something that is really important is the fact that you know how to train your clients to deal with the media you're presenting to them. And I think that's really important because I know that we've worked together on projects with people who have never dealt with media in the past. And there is a lot of hand holding to get them to make sure that they say the right things when they're on camera, et cetera, or say all the things, or at least the three highlights that you really want them to say. And so I think that's really important that that's something a publicist is really good at is boiling down the talking points so that what needs to be said and get out there. And that you guys are really good at making sure that people who have never done this before don't get on camera and look like a deer in headlights, but actually look intelligent and like they can actually sell this.
Hopefully.
And I also think this about relationships is really important. Knowing that this writer would probably be the right person for this article about this film. And so you're not sending them 100 things that they're not going to do. And they're going to be writing about something else for some other thing. So it's important to know the relationships and know who they can write about. And I think that makes a big difference.
Oh, and I think with those relationships, they also know what these reporters are taking, the things they're actually interested in. And Kendra might have 3 clients and 3 different events over the same time period or whatever. But she knows I can pitch this to this media, and I can pitch you to that media, and then I can pitch the third to the other media, and you're all going to get coverage because you're not all going after the same thing at the same time.
Yeah. I also, when I'm consulting, possibly potentially going to take on a new client, I always put it this way for myself. I go, I don't handle movie star movies. I go, there's a lot of publicists that do that and handle studio movies and movie star movies. I go, more often than not, 90% of the time, my movies need some extra TLC. They need a little extra help. They need me to vouch for that film. And as I say, the visual is always me jamming my foot in the doors that's trying to be closed, saying, just let me say one thing. Just let me say this one thing. And so that's what my clients need because they're always super indie. They're teeny tiny. And the regional fests are regional fests. They're not market fests. So even on that front, it takes a little bit of massaging and work. And the other thing also I wanted to say about, to echo what Kendra was saying, is that to dumb it down for people even more, you go, there's a vast difference between me saying, I'm super freaking awesome and my movie is super freaking awesome versus having Lisa or Kendra go, John's movie is freaking awesome. And it's bragging on yourself
Totally.
versus having this other person bragging on you. There's a huge gulf of difference between those two things.
I would just add, I think that's exactly right. And my partner Travis and I often say that we're two types of professionals. We're professional cheerleaders, where we're obviously cheerleading for our clients, and we're professional nudgers because our other side of our job, and it's a very time-consuming part of our job, is follow-up.
Much
It's
nudging.
so much nudging, right?
Know your timing, you have to know your cadence, you have to know, who wants nudges, who doesn't want nudges, who,
I also thought when you have a third party, when you have this cheerleader that's acting on your behalf, you end up having a different perspective of what is important, what is newsworthy, what is the message that the masses or the niche audience, whoever it is you're trying to attract, is going to be the most interested in. And that's a hard thing to do if you're in the trenches, right? If you are, let's say, working on your own film, let's say it's an autobiographical film, right? And it's the story of you. How are you supposed to be impartial? It's nearly impossible. You don't know what's going to be interesting. And John talks about this all of the time when he talks about, how to make a good movie. Show it to people other than your mother, so they can give you the honest feedback. And it's the same thing with a publicist. We'll be able to say, okay, this is what people are going to be interested in, right? That's an important part of the puzzle. It really is.
It even works publicist to publicist. Like I remember, was it a couple years back? I had a film that was Chicago centric. I'm not Chicago centric. Lisa is, and I remember like Lisa actually vouching for me for some professor on behalf of that film because of the connection, and it was huge because it's no, he's legit, and so you should pay attention. And it was a great thing. I was going, holy crap, that was a bonus. And it's one of those things that when we do that for filmmakers, and that's also, I was just talking to a publicist, very good friend of mine, almost one of my best friends, and she and I were talking about the fact that we couldn't take on bad films because if you take on one or two bad films in a row, then you may have to take on five really good films to make up for those two bad ones to get yourself back into that level where journalists go, okay, their taste is almost flawless. I will take a look at that, even though I've never heard of this ever. And it's as publicists, we're judged project by project on how seriously people can take us.
Absolutely. Our reputation, and as independent publicists, not being in studio or in that space where we've got a slate that is just what's the next film, what's the next film. We live and die by our reputation. And when a client comes my way, I always make it as clear as I can that what you're investing in when you hire a publicist is our expertise and our effort, right? That we're going to pound the pavement for you, that we're going to identify these niches and these angles and these timelines. And we talked about relationships, and I love what Kendra said about they open our emails. Yes, I say that's the difference. It's also our responsibility to understand timing, to understand the landscape. I am representing a festival here in Chicago that was planning on announcing their full program lineup today, which is April 10th. Another film festival announced its lineup on April 10th. And so late last week, I emailed and I said, hey guys, can we bump this up a day? Let's go the day before Cannes announces, because that's going to get entirely lost in the wash there. So knowing the landscape, knowing the calendar in that way, to Kendra's point, in a way that allows our clients to do their jobs and to do what their focus is, I think all of these things you bring to the table. And then, John, to your point, the idea is I take on a project because I'm fairly confident I can deliver results on it, whether it's a regional festival or a film release or whatever it might be. I learned very quickly when I went out on my own that no is okay to say, because if I can't deliver those results, then I'm not going to be any good to anybody. That's going to sink me faster, whether that's because it's not a good film, whether that's because the timing is wrong, whether that's because we're not a good fit, whether it's location or genre or what have you. I decided early on not to take on talent publicity. That's a whole other realm to represent talent. I do festival event release publicity. So knowing all of those things, and especially when you're thinking about whether it's as an organization or as a filmmaker, who you might hire, having an understanding of their work and how they work and where their expertise is can be huge. And when you think about what's the match there.
And I think it's interesting because you said it and John mentioned it also that a lot of times when you hire a publicist, they might be really good at a subset, maybe A, B, and C, but they don't do
Hmm.
D and E. You can
Hmm.
hire a second publicist to do D and E, and the two will work together to make sure that the full thing is covered. You can't
Absolutely.
expect one publicist and one firm to be able to, unless you have a national firm behind you, to really take care of everything because quite honestly, everyone has their specialties and their contacts and their expertise. And that's what you're ultimately paying for is you're paying for this expertise and this reach. I know a lot of people who are old school are going to ask this about, but press releases or media releases, do they still matter?
Of course
Yeah,
they do.
they matter.
Yeah.
Who writes them? I was thinking about this the other
and
day,
and when to
like,
use them.
and when to use
Right.
them. How many clients have come to you and said, ChatGPT wrote this press release, will you look it over for me? Has that happened to you yet?
No one's admitted
Okay.
it.
Probably didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
S-
yeah.
I'm still
So
Yeah,
thinking of
yeah.
doing
that
it.
started this year for me. We've had a few clients that said, "Oh, we don't need you to write the release. Will you look over the one that ChatGPT wrote?"
Guilty. I sent you a document that GPT wrote. Okay.
I wasn't gonna name names, John. You did that to
Okay.
yourself. But
Well,
I will
you
say
know,
that
uh,
ChatGPT, first of all, say what you will, but about their horrendous use of water and waste and all of that, I will plug that for my environmental friends out there. It doesn't write a bad release. But
I think that there's something to be said for like the mental load that it can
yeah,
lift, but
Yeah.
it should never be. I remember hearing stories about lawyers taking chat GPT briefs where they're quoting like fictional cases
Yes.
or something. It would certainly be the same thing for a press release. I don't know.
you need to give it the information.
Well,
Don't
and
just send that out.
yeah.
Oh
Make sure
God,
looking
don't
at it.
ever, don't ever.
Do that only if you don't have a publicist.
I have a benefit because I have my own film news website as well of getting pitches from all my publicist friends for all their clients as well as sending them out myself. So I see how people are handling their press releases and putting stuff out. And I have to say, and talking strictly about film festivals, for example, if it's just a list of freaking films, trying not to swear, you guys, then I may do a cursory glance and then I'll delete. But because I want to know more than just a list of films, anybody can give me a list of goddamn films. And that's the thing. I want the story of why is the film different? How's the film festival different this year? It's been around for 20 years. What makes this year different? What's exciting and new? What's the messaging? And I also know the reality is by this point, maybe there's, if you're in really good shape nationally, maybe 10 sites that actually post a film lineup release. And the majority of them, they're just going to cut and paste what you wrote. So therefore you go, all right, if you're just going to drop in exactly what I wrote, then I'm going to write the story and I'm going to put in the messaging that I really want people to get and highlight the things that I want there. And all of that beyond just simply the films. And I'm going to include every damn film too. I'm not just going to link to a site, because if you're going to post it all, then I'm going to put it all in there. And that's the thing that I don't know that does ChatGPT or AI
Totally.
that's ever going to supply that.
Yeah. I do think to the question of do press releases matter or what are they these days? I think when you've got a narrative to tell, like they still have to be sharply written, they still have to be lead heavy, very clear, very distinct to catch the attention. Because to John's point, your inbox is just blowing up with stuff. And I think Bart, you had said that a publicist, one of the things that we do is bring attention to detail on who to even pitch to. And there's so many people that don't do that, that they just blast wide. So you're getting these emails and then your press release gets lost. So if you're talking about as a filmmaker with a festival premiere coming up, you might not need a full narrative 4-paragraph press release for that. Right? You might be more in the space of a media announcement or something that's a little bit more concise and gives the journalists and the people who might cover it an immediate hit of here's why you should care. And that's okay. That's going to look different. Whereas to John's point, if you've got your executive director is retiring or you are launching a new filmmaker engagement program or something along those lines, then there's a narrative and you might need to include a quote and you might need to reference sponsors and all these things. So I think it's, as with everything we've talked about thus far, there's a strategy to it.
I'd also say there's a distinct difference between a press release and a pitch. And I think that this is something that a lot of people that are not in the field of publicity overlook. A press release, by all sort of intents and purposes, is the information. And certainly it can be crafted in a way that tells a story and, to John's point, gets all of the points that you want across in case it's actually just ready to go and up on a website directly without an actual article. But the part that is really of interest, I think, to most reporters and just journalists out there, podcasters, et cetera, is the part that gets overlooked oftentimes, particularly when you just put a release out on a wire. And that's the pitch. And the pitch is the part that is basically the personalized version of why whoever you're writing to is interested in this story and crafting the story not for them, but in a way that you think will be of most interest to them so that they can be interested in the story and dive in deeper. And then they'll go into the press release and they'll know the who, what, where, when, why, and the quote, which sometimes they pull, sometimes they don't. clients agonize over what their quotes are in a release. I'm like, don't worry. If this works, they'll talk to you in person. So a release is important. If you're in a pinch and you want to waste a lot of water, you can use on ChatGPT. But I really think it's important to get somebody to actually write it and at least look it over. And then if you're working with a publicist, the best part about the whole thing is they'll put the pitch together. That's really the most important part about getting in.
And the irony here also, when draft off of what Kendra just said, it takes us back to one of the first questions, the difference between PR and marketing. I don't tell you how many times my clients will try to put something out and go, that's ad copy. That's not something that's
Yeah.
provable. That's not something that's factual. I can't say that out loud. I know you want to
Yeah.
say that out loud, but it's a lie, right? You know,
Or it's
it's
not
like,
newsworthy. That's not the
yeah,
story.
yeah.
You might think that it's important. You might think that it's interesting, but these journalists have zero obligation to you. Their obligation is to their readers, it's to their communities, it's to their audiences. Oh, I love that. It's ad copy. I'm stealing that job.
And just to drill down on what that means, because that is so smart. It's so true. I think one of the things that I know that Lisa John and myself have all spent a lot of time doing is understanding what style of writing is appropriate in a release. And it's not marketing copy. It's not, as John said, ad copy. When I got my degree in comms, like you were told how to stylistically craft a press release. And you actually are supposed to be fairly impartial and you're supposed to use language that is factual and not opinionated or charged in any sort of which way. Take the qualifiers out. So when a journalist reads this, and particularly real journalists, not just God, I don't want to get myself in trouble, but they're going to see it and they're going to go, this is copy. This is not news. I'm not going to publish your let me put you in touch with the ad department if you want me to write about this. So I think it's really important to know that there's an art to a press release and there certainly is an art to a pitch.
So I want to ask, obviously, I feel like PR is the one thing every festival should be spending money on, right? Because it's just something they can't do themselves and they really need someone else to do. But we know that many of our listeners are very small festivals that would dream of having a PR budget but just can't afford it. What can they do to build relationships with reporters or especially people locally to take their information as serious or newsworthy?
I work with all shapes and sizes, as you well know. And there's some huge ass ones, and then there's like little weekend fests, and they're just all kinds of things. But the one thing that goes over everything is just accessibility and just a blatant customer service that say I or Lisa or Kendra can provide to a journalist that overcomes the pain in the assery covering a film festival. And it's something as simple as, can you just get me the images for the film? Can you just freaking send me something high res that I can use? Or can you please just send me a screening link where the password works? Things like this that just drive journalists up the wall as they're trying to make deadlines. And you go, our job, the three of us, our job is to make it super freaking easy to just put it on a silver platter. So of course they're going to cover everything. And they may even do extra coverage that they weren't planning on. That's the thing too, is that each one of our clients or film festivals, they go, oh, you got that piece. You go, yeah, we got that piece, but I want to talk to them because I want to get more. And for me, like for a film festival, we go, I don't want them just talking to the head of the fest. I want at least two quotes from two different filmmakers because I want to spread the love and I want to show a diversity of the films that we have. I want that piece to be bigger. And I can only do that if I have that conversation and if I have that relationship that all three of us are talking about that we build with people. And then they go and they welcome that. And you go, yeah, all right. So you got one little blurb piece of 2 inches long. I want the whole page. And those are the things that keep me up awake all night. Probably Kendra and Lisa too.
I realized only recently, which I'm slightly embarrassed to say, like, why am I, to whatever degree, good at this job? And I think it's built for someone, A, you have to be an extrovert, right? We're all extroverts. We don't mind getting out there and having the conversation. Or if we are introverts, we grin and bear it. And B, it's the attention to detail. I feel the same way. I say the same thing. My job is to make their job easy. And I think specifically to what can festivals do? What can make their jobs easy? Have your ducks in a row before you go out, have your images ready, have all of those pieces. And I think if you're from an event perspective, if you're an annual event or if you're an event that only happens a certain time of year or whatever, use the off season to build those relationships so that you're not scrambling when the event comes around. Use the off season to extend, maybe have a mixer or invite people to lunch or even just an email to say, hey, thinking ahead to the festival this year, let me know what's of interest to you so we can be sure to, if you're working with an agency, that's what they're doing. That's what we're doing in those spaces and cultivating that. I love, Kendra, how you would put it about like, it's such an advantage to have an agency that has so many different clients because what I'm using over here, I can use over there. And so it's that kind of vibe in that regard. But yeah, it goes both ways as far as being prepared. Make their job easy and make yours easy so you're not scrambling when you do need that connection.
So, Lisa, you touched on this, and I'd like you to fill it out a little more. What are all the elements that a festival has to give you for you to get your job right?
On the festival side,
Or filmmaker side?
yeah,
So that's-
on the filmmaker side, and I would be interested to hear, Kendra and John, what you ask of your filmmakers. I have a list of 6 things that I always tell filmmakers they need to have. Let's see if I can remember all 6. It's the press notes document that's got your director statement and your bios and credits. That's really your Bible. That's where people are going to get what they need. We had a piece run in the Hollywood Reporter recently, and the writer spoke to THR, but they had pulled all of that from the director's statement. That's where they got that's where they got all of that stuff from. Film stills and key art, having a screening link for your film, a secure screening link. You've got to get comfortable with showing people the film once it's ready. Having your headshot or having headshots of the main players at the festival so that they've got something they can use right away and they don't have to go Google and use something you don't want them to use, if you will. And I think on the festival side, when we're repping and working with a festival at an organization level, and I defer to John on this, you cannot share too many details, whether it's about talent attending or program. I want to talk to the programmers about how they built this slate. There's no such thing as sharing too much from the festival side as far as what stories to tell and the scheduling and the events and all those pieces.
Yeah. So you never lie. Cannot do that ever in your entire life. You just can't do it because I still remember people that lied to me in 2006 on the press side. But you don't also have to tell everybody anything. You can be very selective on exactly what information you give out on that. I will say, talking about what how we make it easy for press or whatever. Like there was a film festival and just recently, and I heard this secondhand that they would not let press attend screenings unless they covered a red carpet. And a lot of people just wanted to review films. They were not red carpet press, but that wasn't important to them. They had in their mind that they were going to build up this whole red carpet thing because they were trying to capture a magic that had happened like many years past when they used to have celebrities. And press rebelled against that. And I had a client at that festival, and I had to come in, and there were press going, no, we're boycotting that. And so I had to come in and fix things just so my client could have a good experience coverage at that fest. And then there's another one that this will crack you up. When I was originally talking to them about taking on their fest, I said, well, how do you do red carpets? And they said, they were famous, they'd always have a couple stars, movie stars each year. And they said, well, we do a carpet for those 2 stars. And then we do something so the other filmmakers think that they're getting something. I go, whoa, wait, hold on. I'm sorry, what? And that was that thing you're going, no, it's everybody's included. It's whether it be press or whether it be filmmakers, that's not the way that you do this shit. But that's the thing. When you have, regardless of the size of your festival, that's oftentimes, John, I think what you're talking about, why it's important to have someone like us there on board to go, hold on a second. Hold on, cowboy. So let's stop the horse because you're hurting yourself in this misguided idea of what you should offer or how you could keep it strict.
Yeah, it's a good segue into red carpets because I want to talk about that. But I do want to say, 2 years ago I was working with a film, and we had a world premiere at a very large, prominent festival, and the PR person spent a ton of time negotiating what the red carpet would look like, etc. And then a week before the festival said, "Oh, we're going to bump you from the red carpet because we have another celebrity we want to show instead." And
Mm.
I went ballistic. I'm like, "We're pulling the film. We don't need you." And they end up acquiescing and making the mistake of putting us first in the line, and everyone wanted to talk to us, and so the whole press line was then slowed down dramatically because we were first, and everyone wanted to talk to us, and that was great. I felt really good about that, but yeah, so much of the PR person's job was just to negotiate what that was gonna look like and who was gonna walk and how long it was gonna take and blah. It's crazy. But let's talk about red carpets because I think everyone has an idea of what a red carpet is, and I think a lot of festivals who have never really done one before just throw one up with a backdrop and go, "Oh, people are just gonna walk and take a picture and that's it." But it's not. The ones that are good are highly orchestrated. Purpose of those and
Well, John certainly educated me on the value of red carpets.
I have publicists that I'm good friends with that I respect a lot that go, it doesn't matter. The red carpets don't matter. And go, oh, but it does. And you're really being silly to not emphasize it. And yes, and it works if it is organized. And it is work if you're doing it with intention and purpose. And like for me, I'm sure Lisa and Kendra have horror stories and adventure stories with this shit as well. But like me, one of the keys is making sure that everybody is identified. There are few worst pet peeves than when I look on a website of a festival and they have these random ass pictures of people on a red carpet. I go, I don't know who these people are. And unless they're the most beautiful or more handsome people I've ever seen in my entire life, why am I looking pictures at them on this carpet? I don't know what their film is. I don't know who they are. I just don't give a damn about them. And when we have our syndicated agencies, like the Getty Images and the Shutterstocks of the world and people like that, when those information cards get back to photo editors and they don't know who those people and they don't instantly come up on their Google image search to ID them, then those pictures can disappear. And now suddenly your client who was at this really big festival, market festival, now suddenly you can't find those pictures. That's interesting. I wonder why. Because they're not going to put up just mystery people. They're just not going to do that. Next.
I agree. I totally agree. I think you use the word orchestrated and it matters. It's having all those details. It's having the face sheets. It's having the timing down. It's placing the media strategically so that there's an order to the operations of when the interviews happen versus when the photos happen and these kinds of things. Educating, especially an organization and or a filmmaker that either has never hosted them before or has never participated in one before is a huge part of the process. I had one experience where a festival asked me to facilitate implementing their red carpets, and the person who was setting up the event and managing the actual logistics of putting up at the press line the red carpet, the backdrop, and the step and repeat and what have you. The day that we had a whole meeting about it, and the day that I got there to see where it was set up, she had completely moved where it was set up. And her thinking was this way, when people get their tickets scanned, they can go right onto the red carpet, get their photos taken, and then move in to take their seats at the theater. God bless her, she thought that it was for the audience members. And I took a deep breath and I said, we can do that if that I don't think that's what the festival wants. And let me tell you what this is for and how this does work. And so we immediately turned it 90 degrees and moved it so that it worked for the media and the talent attending. Anyways, yeah, and John is just like dying knowing that moment.
No,
Um,
it's really about show business. It's creating a show and also giving value for those filmmakers who have a short film and it could be one of the biggest moments in their lives. The reporters are asking them a
I agree.
question.
Absolutely. And it does vary from festival to festival. I rep films at South by usually the last few years, and I'm repping like this year I repped a Norwegian film. It was the only foreign language film in the dramatic competition. They did not get a press line at the Alamo. The festival has limited resources and they're being selective about how they allocate that timing and all those pieces. But We did have interview space and we facilitated interviews for those filmmakers while they were in Austin. We did take them through all of the portrait studios. We did get, and the festival sets up a step and repeat. So they still get their quote unquote red carpet photos. They still get their moment. They're able to bring on their I always call it, it's like your wedding reception moment. Let's get all the iterations. Let's get bride and groom. Let's get, cast and crew, like all of those iterations. That's your moment on that step and repeat. And I think, John, the way you said it, you've got to know what you're negotiating and know what those expectations are to know what that flow of that event's going to be like.
Yeah, exactly. And I was at South by, and I pinched for two publicist friends of mine for their films because they couldn't be there in person or they had competing screenings. And yeah, and all of those three films, none of them were given a red carpet. So we just had to do photos on our own. And I still swooped in with my IDs and was best buddies with, I had three different photographers I was working with. And they were, of course, they were loving it because exactly what you're saying, Lisa, like I already had organized like how the pictures were going to happen, who was posing with who, what the combinations were. And so then we did the stuff for the films that I was working on, and then we got off, and then it was pure chaos because the other people swooped in, and that's the thing. Also, I think for if you get back with I think with John's intention on like smaller festivals and what they do is that you go, you can have an 8x8 step and repeat. You can have a teeny tiny step and repeat, and your teeny tiny fest, but if you have your house photographer there and you also preset it up for your films that are coming in and let them know, all right, have a photographer of your own there so you can have social media stuff instantly and you're not waiting for us to give you those photos.
Yep.
And then maybe you can also get some outside press. Of course, it's tough in local markets. They're not New York and LA to get photographers for other press outlets out there, but it does happen sometimes. Then again, you can get great value out of that for both the festival and the filmmakers. And it wasn't a huge endeavor.
Let me ask you guys this. So, a film festival will have a publicist. What is the value of hiring your own publicist if the festival has one? What does that add? And is that a problem with the festival publicist? How does that all work?
If you're saying if you're a filmmaker,
Yeah. If you hire somebody and then will the festival publicist help? And what does the individual publicist do for you? That's different.
I think that film festival publicist has their own agenda, and a film publicist has their own agenda. And obviously, those agendas can come together, certainly, but they will not, it's not a guarantee. And so the job of a film festival publicist is to get butts in seats, sell tickets, get eyes on the name of the film festival, understand that it exists, elevate the brand for both audience, if they're nonprofit, for donors, for board members, and for filmmakers. And so they're working to try and bring attention to the film festival. And sometimes we do that by headlining certain films, right? Or pitching certain films to certain reporters and journalists that we think would be interested in that particular film. But at the end of the day, that's not why we're trying to get media attention. That's just the Trojan horse for media attention, right? A film. And it may or may not be your film. And so a film publicist's main goal is to get attention specifically for that film, which it's in a film festival. So they're aligned, they're not. And oftentimes, John, Lisa, I'm sure you guys can speak to this too. When we're working for film festivals, we're often bombarded by film publicists whose film they're represented in the festival, trying to get us as much information or even ask for our contacts in the local market. And it's a bit of a tricky dance because from our perspective, we want coverage for the whole festival. We don't just want coverage for one film. And there's only so much media, right? We always try to play nice and we always work with publicists that reach out from films because we've been there as well. We've been on the other side. But I'd say if you're a filmmaker, do not just rely on film festival press to get your film attention because it may or may not. But definitely think about how your film, or if you're hiring a publicist, you hope they do this, fits into the larger story of the festival, or give the publicists that are working on the festival every possible asset that you can think of that will help them use your film to move the festival.
Yeah, just the reality is, if you're the publicist for a festival, depending on how many films you have programmed, you may have 130 to 200 babies that
Yep.
you're in charge of taking care of. And so you can bake in, as I put it, press that takes care of everybody. And that'll be your red carpets. Sometimes you'll have a series of sit downs. Sometimes you'll have some other stuff so that anybody that comes there that doesn't have a publicist, they'll get something. They have something ahead for them scheduled. But I'm thrilled to freaking death when I have films that have personal publicists because I know, okay, they're going to be taken care of a little bit, even beyond the stuff that I'm trying to get. And as Kendra was saying, also, you go again, especially in smaller markets, maybe you have one newspaper, maybe you have one television station that may be doing morning interviews, maybe a couple radio stations. So you go, okay, in my smaller markets, how many outlets do I have? And then how many films do I have? If I'm the festival publicist, I'm trying to spread that love. And so maybe I can get 6 films, but there's another 30 or so, maybe 100 films that I can't get because there are only so many spaces on those interviews, so many on those curtain raisers that people want to talk to. And so if they have their own advocate, if they have Lisa, if they have Kendra on charge of them, then I go, okay, I can breathe a little sigh of relief on part of that. And likely, because they'll probably be in touch with me very early on, then I'll go, oh, and I'm also going to include them in the body of the press release because they've already advocated for it and did their sales job. I'm going, yeah, all right, I'm going to put you in the body because I can't put everybody in the body of the press release, but I will for them. And they've already done their job by doing that. And then hopefully then they'll leave me alone.
No, but I think it's a really great point that you raised that it's mostly about when you hire a publicist that's dedicated to your film at the festival, it's elevating you out of the needle in a haystack space. But I do think it's a really interesting point that it also immediately elevates you to the festival's marketing and publicity staff. It immediately elevates you on their radar of, oh, okay, this is somebody that is invested and our efforts are going to be multiplied and amplified by their efforts. And that's a great advantage. The other piece that I would mention on this is just that when you hire a dedicated publicist, which I'll be honest, I think, and I don't want to speak for Kendra or for John, but it's not always necessary, right? It's not always necessary at every festival. So I think that's a piece as a filmmaker to think about. But if it is necessary, or if it does seem like it's warranted, the other piece to think about is that publicists can be digging in and niching down for your film in ways that the festival team is not equipped to or is able to. And I think that maybe it's just another way of what Kendra said about the festival team has their agenda and your publicist has their agenda. But the idea being like maybe you're a music documentary and they can go after the music writer at the local paper versus the festival team is going to is going to stick to the entertainment pages or what have you. The festival team doesn't have the time or the resources to dig into every single niche for every single festival. Maybe it's a community based, you're reaching out to the Jewish community in town or whatever it might be. Those are ways that when you hire a publicist for your film and its festival premiere, they can add that layer of outreach.
I know, and here's the other thing, and Lisa just reminded me of this too, that as festival publicist, if I know that say because especially because I work with Lisa, I haven't worked with Kendra that much, but if I know that they're on board, then if I get like that super early morning 5 a.m. TV spot and I give it to them and their client likely is not going to flake because they've got Kendra and Lisa to remind them not to freaking flake on me interview. And whereas if a film has not been in touch with me and I'm sending out that thing offering them up, then I'm a little bit nervous going, oh, gee, please don't mess this up. So that's also a big key with this and the filmmaker can do this on their own behalf as well, obviously. If they reach out to Kendra, Lisa, or myself, who's ever in charge of the festival, and they introduce themselves early on and they have all the materials there immediately, then I go, okay, they're on it. They're eager beavers, and I can pretty much depend that they're not going to screw it up if I set them up with something. But there's always that little paranoia when you have those spots because that's your reputation on the line too.
Right. As a festival, we're pretty sure that the 5 films we know we can pitch, right? That
Mhm.
they have a celebrity attached to it, they are locally made, they're very topical this month, whatever. We know what we can pitch, right? So when a filmmaker comes to us that has a publicist, it's really helpful for us because they're gonna be able to get stuff that we can't possibly get or deal with a film that we possibly weren't gonna be marketing to begin with because it wasn't in what we know through our publicists and our connections would be covered anyway. I always used to say to Kendra when I was doing DC Shorts, like, these are the 5 photos I know will be running in the Washington Post. Just a picture of Judi Dench and this whatever. Like, you knew which ones they were gonna pick, which ones they were gonna and quite honestly, from a festival point of view, these are also films that are programmed at times that are more palatable sometimes to audiences. They're given slightly better screening spots, locations, etcetera, because they know that this is gonna get publicity and it's gonna sell more
Mhm.
tickets, and therefore we need to accommodate more people. Which brings me to celebrities. I know a lot of festivals feel like they need to bring in celebrities to drum up audiences. Talk to us about festivals and their efforts to bring a celebrity on board.
Listen, the truth is, it is so important for audience interest and engagement by this point. And of course, it's the worst part of my job ever because I'm putting out 50 to 60 asks to personal publicists to hopefully get one person to say yes. That's how it really works out. But it's also, and I've had 2 fests recently, and these were they were great talents. I mean, but I would put them in the mid-level in terms of what they were name-wise, and people just went apeshit. They went crazy over these people. I'm going, "Really? That guy? Okay, all right. He's great. I like his movies or whatever. Really? That guy? Okay." So you have that to deal with. And like here in Dallas specifically, it's just celebrity crazy. It's and they're just desperate in this town to have a famous person. And but here's also the thing, and I'm absolutely sure that Kendra and Lisa have gone through this too, where the person that's ahead of that festival goes, "Oh, we got this person." And they go, "Who?" He's the guy who. Oh, stop. That's not a name. If it's the guy who, or it's a woman that, what? That's not a name. A name is a name. You tell me, and I go, "Oh, that's awesome." But if it's that guy who does the thing, you go, "No, that's not a name. I may recognize his face. That's not a name that anybody's going to recognize the actual name."
So that's the John Wildman rule.
I do think it's the same here in Chicago. I can pitch till the cows come home, but the minute I attach a name when someone's in town, all of a sudden I'm the most popular girl at the dance. It's our culture of what grabs people's attention and keeps their attention. I think though there's room for, and maybe this is part of how we do our jobs. I think of it and in the sense of almost like a spoonful of sugar metaphor or spoonful of sugar mentality, where it's like, can we sure, I'll give you the celebrity or I'll give you that placement. Can we also make sure that such and such gets mentioned? Or can we also make sure that
These other 100 films.
can we strike a deal or not maybe in those terms, but where it's that opening that allows for the rest of the stuff that you do want to get out there to get out.
So, Lisa, we used to have this Ernie Kovacs award where you bring in a celebrity, and I would go talk to the press, and all they would want to know is who's the Kovacs this year, and I'd say, but I've got 200 really wonderful films that I want to talk to you about.
I would say that's interesting you say that, because we're mainly based in DC, and DC isn't really a celebrity town. We're a different kind of town in terms of celebrity. And so we don't really get, certainly, there are some celebrities that come through and some of them get a lot of attention, but it's not where our market really goes crazy. And so I would say to festivals that are maybe don't have the budget for a celebrity or aren't drawing in films that are bringing in celebrities to try to figure out what you do have, right? You want to try to sell your festival authentically and you want to try to understand who your audience is, why that audience is going to buy a ticket and get off the couch in this quote unquote post COVID era and come to a theater. And so it may be a celebrity, but if you don't have the budget or you're not in a celebrity kind of crazed down, then try to figure out what it is. There's a lot of other things that can bring people together, and you really need to focus in on what it is that makes your festival different.
Right. And I can say that from a festival point of view, it's incredibly expensive to have a celebrity come. There's a lot of stuff you've never thought about that you're going to have to deal with, not just expensive plane tickets and more expensive hotel rooms, but security and logistics about getting them around. They're not, you can't get them a subway pass and tell them to go to the movie theater. Private areas at parties, if they agree to go to a party, negotiating what parties they're going to go to, where they're going to show up, and who's going to be able to say hi to them, etc. There's a lot involved. And quite honestly, one festival I worked at, it was imperative for them to have celebrities, and it was just it was a bane of my existence because I felt like 90% of what I was doing was to make sure they were okay while I had an entire festival to run. To me, I could care less about this person showing up. And some of them, I was like, oh my God, this person's showing up. But then part of me is, I have so many other things to deal with that I can't spend all my time on this one person. And same way, we once had someone come in, an Oscar winner. We were very excited, blah blah blah, and they ended up trashing a hotel room and a bunch of other stuff, and it cost me a fortune in the end. And I'm like, that was so not worth it. That photo was lovely.
Not all celebrities trash the hotel room.
I know that, but it does happen, and there's things you have to think about afterwards. So is that photo really worth it? Are you going to get enough play off that photo? Is that photo going to generate enough income to offset all that you've spent to have that person come to town?
The interesting thing also that Kendra was leaning to also goes again back to one of the things we started with, like, what is it exactly we do? And by this point, when you're the publicist, then we're oftentimes enlisted to come up with those ideas on how to eventize and how to help the festival create an event. And like I had a big epiphany at San Luis Obispo a few years back. We had an honoree that had won multiple Oscars doing production design for Spielberg as Zemeckis, and he's having a conversation with Ben Mankiewicz, and it's holy crap, major Oscar dude talking with Ben Mankiewicz or whatever, and the theater's about half full, but there was a line down the block for people outside the theater to take pictures with the DeLorean car. And you go, "Oh, God damn it," right? And but it was a huge educational thing for me to go, all right, it's almost like we all remember the freaking Barbie boxes and people taking their pictures with those. And we go, okay, we've now reached a point where I used to say if I had a Q&A, if I had a filmmaker at my festival, I would have that person, that audience member sold for life. They would always be coming back. Now it's not good enough. Just a basic Q&A, not good enough. I need to have more now. And whether it be props and stuff for people to take pictures with, whether it be some kind of eventizing, I've got to think like William Castle or Samuel Arkoff, who were like dressing up actresses as nurses to sign people up for insurance policies in case they were frightened to death watching a movie. I've got to think up of like ideas like that to get, actually, I think Lisa mentioned, get people off their butts off of the sofa and go to the theater by this point. And yeah, and so for those festivals that can't really afford to bring in a celebrity, then those are the kind of things that they're going to need to think about now.
Credit where due, that was Kendra.
No, advertising is so important. And quite honestly, now, if you don't have a photograph, it didn't happen, right? I
Yeah.
can't tell you how many events
Or
I
a
go to where
video,
everyone's got their
right?
camera in front of
Yeah.
them, and I'm like, watch the concert, stop taking pictures, and enjoy the moment you're in. But I guess I'm old, so therefore it's lost on me. Like I never think about, oh, I should have taken a picture of that. But okay.
I think you brought up something interesting just prior to this idea of what is it worth to get that photo or to have that person attending. Certainly not worth a destroyed hotel room. Whether it's festivals, whether it's a filmmaker, whatever, one of the first questions I'm asking a client is, what does success look like to you? What do you want to get out of this? And I think that goes so far to drive, and I imagine Kendra and John would agree, that goes so far to drive our strategy and what we're pitching for, because what puts butts in seats and sells is very different than what, let's say, elevates someone's profile in the trades or whatever it might be. So by the time we're all done with this, what is going to have happened so that you'll hire me again? What is that success going to look like? That's a huge conversation to have as early as possible. And sometimes it does spur that conversation. Like the client hasn't even had that conversation yet. They need to sit back and think about that. And then you can say, okay, you've previously said XYZ is your goal. We can invest effort into this and redirect our efforts, but that's different than what you've originally intended. And that's not going to get us to where you had said you wanted to go in this. And just having that conversation both at the beginning and at these mile markers throughout can be a big help.
So I think on that note, I think we have had an incredible discussion here. We could probably talk for another 2 hours, but we have listeners we have to think about. Right, and Bart has to edit this down. Lisa, Kendra, John, thank you so much. This has been really incredible information, and not just for filmmakers, but for festivals. And people don't know how the sausage is made, and the PR is such an important ingredient in that sausage, and they really don't understand why it's the important spice that brings it all together. And so I really appreciate this insight
And
into
it's like from festivals, if you get good press, your festival will thrive. And it's important to be able to work with really talented people to move the festival forward and to sell the ideas that are critical to the festival.
And with that, I think we are done with this episode.
This was indeed an incredibly great discussion with so much information for both festivals and filmmakers. Marketing and PR is such a critical part of the filmmaking process and unfortunately often overlooked.
As Adina Monsoon from AbFab used to say, PR is everything and everything is PR. And she's right, and I think that's what we learned today from Lisa, Kendra, and John. A huge thanks to our guests, John Waldman, Lisa Trifone, Kendra Rubenfeld, and to our incredible producer, Carrie Sheehan, who always makes us sound fantastic. Remember to subscribe to Frankly Festivals at franklyfestivals.com or on Substack or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Also, remember to send us questions that we can address at the end of each show. We didn't have time today because we just had so much going on, and this was such a great conversation. I wanted to just concentrate on that. Or put your questions into the subreddits on film festivals and filmmakers on Reddit, and I'll scrape it from there. But a huge thanks to you for listening and contributing to this podcast. I will leave you with these wise words I leave every time. There's a festival for every film, but your film is not for every festival.